Well, it's official. I've been medicated for ADHD for almost 2 years, and man, has there been a lot I have learned over those last 2 years.
Rip and tear until it is done.
Kia ora, YouTube. A few months ago, I did a video called 8 Tips for Training with ADHD from a strength coach who has ADHD. I'll link it over here. And what was interesting was I made that video after having just been diagnosed with ADHD as an adult and realizing how many of my unique training systems, approaches to training, how I handle myself in the gym was due to the fact that for the last 33 years at the time, I had been using exercise as a means of managing my ADHD symptoms. It's quite clear to me now that many of the challenges I faced in my life due to having undiagnosed ADHD were being somewhat treated by exercise. And if you look through the literature in ADHD, you find this quite common, this recommendation that by choosing to exercise, you're regulating your nervous system, and it can really help with ADHD symptoms, give you clarity, make you feel stable, etc., etc. Prior to my diagnosis of having ADHD, I just kind of lumped myself into being an anxious person, right? Like, ooh, I was prone to anxiety. Who the hell knew why?
I just know something bad is going to happen.
I thought that that was what was happening over here, but realistically, that was just a byproduct of my unique brain chemistry. And that's why I think it's not that uncommon to find people in the fitness industry that turn out they have ADHD, because we are drawn to it and it kind of sticks quite well. However, since my diagnosis, I've now been medicated for ADHD for almost 2 years, and it's changed quite a lot of things, including my relationship with exercise. So because this YouTube channel is primarily focused on exercise, I'm gonna split this video into 2 parts. So if you're just here to find out about what it's like being medicated and training, that's gonna be the first part of this video. I'm going to just delve into what I've observed has happened to my training since being medicated. The second half of this video is going to be a bit more of like the personal stuff, how it's affected my life, but I'll leave that to the end. So when it comes to having ADHD, choosing to be medicated is a completely personal choice. Some people love it, some people hate it. I've been fortunate enough that I started taking medication and I saw a positive impact on my overall life. I take 20 milligrams of methylphenidate twice a day, sometimes only once, sometimes not at all. And while this has kept me productive, it definitely has changed a lot of things in my time in the gym. So let's start with how it has affected exercising. When it comes to training, I've always had a bias for heavy lifting. I love the intensity, I love the environment, I love psyching myself up, all that kind of stuff. And that comes from the hallmark of ADHD, which is a somewhat inability to regulate your nervous system. If we were to look at like the hype scale, we'll call it, with ADHD, you're either very high or very low. You're not in this nice stable plane that most people like to exist in. So when left to rest, you'll generally go into the slump, and your ADHD symptoms are your brain trying to find stimulus to bring you back up to like happiness, right? Now, intense lifting gave me the ability to go from these lows into these highs. It was a safe environment for an emotional explosion of just aggression, emotion, whatever you want to call it, right? You hype yourself up, you get it done, you let it all out, and then your nervous system downregulates, allowing you to be at peace and handle your ADHD symptoms for a bit. One of the interesting things I have found with being medicated for ADHD is because my emotional regulation has improved, my desire for training has somewhat dropped. Don't get me wrong, I still love training, and it will be a lifelong pursuit for betterment. However, emotionally, I am no longer a slave to training. If I miss a training session or maybe even a week of training now, it doesn't destroy my life, right? Like, I'm still a functional person within the week, and that is because my emotions are now being regulated by my medication. I've always been somewhat annoyed that my entire existence is defined by fitness. Like I said, absolutely love it, will always love it. But there are more dimensions to me than just someone that likes to throw around heavy weights. But being a slave to the gym, being required to exercise to keep myself happy, meant that I was kind of locked into making sure that it was a priority above everything. This meant that in the past it got in the way of relationships. It gets in the way of even like going on holiday and being able to just enjoy yourself and let go of it, and just basically created a little bit of an imbalance. So in regards to the medication, it has definitely helped me have a better relationship with fitness. Again, I really want to preface this that I will never stop lifting. I still love it, and I might have sounded like I was trashing it, but no, this is my life. I wouldn't have opened a gym if that wasn't the case. I wouldn't just be trying to help people if it wasn't the case. And I honestly think if you have ADHD, it is mandatory that you have some sort of exercise. Now, within the training sessions themselves, when I am medicated, I find it harder to enter that mindset of heavy lifting, right? That grind it out at all costs, nothing matters but getting the bar out. If I have a lot going on in my life and I am medicated at the time, I have a tendency to sometimes sandbag myself and do less than I would in the past. This has kept me injury-free, but I've definitely also lost strength from not being able to train at the same intensity. As my relationship has gone on with being medicated and exercise, I'm now making sure that there are training sessions that I am going into unmedicated so I can enjoy training on the same level that I used to before I was diagnosed and medicated for ADHD. If I'm being completely honest, big picture, I would say the medication has had an adverse effect on my training just because I don't need it as much anymore. But as time is going on and I'm growing and I'm learning about how ADHD affects me and how I can manage it, I'm finding space to be able to return to that aggressive style of training that I've always loved. And there are some positives in regards to being medicated and training at the same time. One of them being is I waste less time between sets. I don't get distracted and it doesn't take me like 7 minutes to sometimes get back to a lift. I am much more honest with myself because I can stay focused on whether I can return back into training. So my sessions used to drag out for 2 hours, sometimes 2.5 hours. I now only train for like an hour to an hour and a half, and it's literally because I'm less distracted, right? The work is being done, I'm being focused. I can focus in on what's important in a training session rather than just being an unregulated mess throwing around weights whenever I feel like it. And that seems to just be an allegory for getting work done in general in life whilst being medicated. So as the medication has brought balance to a lot of things in my life, I'm now able to do what needs to be done in the gym whilst also having moments where I'm unmedicated and I can really enjoy and indulge in the gym. I also do enjoy the shorter, tighter sessions, but there is just something about being a bit of a madman and throwing around some heavy iron. So over time, I will learn to balance these two sides of me even more. So being medicated when it came to the exercise, it obviously has some pros and cons. But one side that I can definitely say has had nothing but cons is the nutrition side of things. I have always been a person that I would say is the complete opposite of a hard gainer. I have lived my life with the appetite of a beast. I have always been able to put food away, put on mass whenever I wanted. Cutting's always been a little bit difficult for me, but because I'm not into bodybuilding, I've never really cared that much about it. However, Ritalin has this terrible tendency of absolutely eliminating hunger. Like it just disappears. And as a person that's always had a really good appetite, losing my ability to feel hunger during the day absolutely wrecked me to begin with. When I first got medicated, it coincided with like opening strength blocks. So I was super active, putting the gym together, building stuff. And my days were all over the place because we're like training clients, training myself, putting this gym together, figuring out websites. Like it was a lot of work, and a normal person would forget to eat anyway. Took that to a whole nother level. Ritalin allowed me to focus so much and enjoy focusing for the first time in my life that I would get hyper fixated and forget to eat for hours. The result being, within those first 3 months, I went from weighing 92 kilograms to 82 kilograms. I dropped 10 kgs in the space of 3 months. It's like I had done an accidental comp prep. But because I wasn't trying to lose weight, I was still training at the same intensity, and I injured myself multiple times in the preceding months because I just wasn't getting in enough calories in order to sustain like good recovery between training sessions. Thankfully, as someone that has been in the gym game forever, having some kind of regimented eating plan was very easy for me to implement. Like, we're used to making sure you get the right amount of calories in, eating the right foods, blah, 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 blah. The only problem is I am quite satiated even on like a moderate amount of calories. Like if I eat 2,000 calories in a day, I will feel perfectly fine. It'll affect my training, but I'll feel perfectly fine. And 2,000 calories is not enough for me to grow. That is like a deficit for me. So eating has become a little bit of a chore, especially during the day. But the main part of that is just making sure that I'm prepared, right? So like I've meal prepped, I've got food on the go. Because the weird thing is, while I don't have an appetite, if I start eating, I will realize I'm hungry, but it's not until I've put food in my mouth. I've also found that as a person that didn't used to eat breakfast, but was always able to make up the calories later throughout the day, it's now important that I get that first meal in prior to me taking my first lot of medication, right? So I actually make sure that I eat something and I try to get a good amount of calories in the morning to be able to run off. The same thing goes for hydration. I used to put away 3-4 liters of water a day. Now I can completely forget about it. But again, I've put systems in place to make sure that I stay hydrated, front loading my day with hydration in the morning, taking a good amount of electrolytes. So even if I get in a hyper-focused work hole, I still have enough fluids and electrolytes to just get through until I remember to drink water again. So yeah, it has been a lot about building new habits, but again, from being in the fitness industry, it's been quite useful having the knowledge on how this is usually done. It's just that I used to be able to do this on autopilot, eat enough, and now I need to have regimented systems. Now let's have a little chat about what it has done for my personal and my professional life. I will try to not let this be a complete trauma dump, but I'm gonna go pretty stream of consciousness. The last 2 years has been what I can only describe as it's been like a mourning process. It has been such a weird cycle. It's had its moments of relief, its moments of sadness, and it is literally like accepting the death of something. That death being the amount of time that has been stolen from me not knowing that I had ADHD, right? That's gonna sound super dramatic, but if you're a person that had a late stage diagnosis, you know exactly what I mean. There have been like a lot of opportunities that I missed out on because of the barriers set in place by my ADHD and not realizing that these barriers were because of ADHD, but rather blaming them on myself as though it was some like intrinsic laziness that existed inside me, because that's the external stimuli that you are getting from everywhere throughout your entire life, right? Like, oh, you're so talented, but you're choosing to just cruise through life, you know, that kind of talk. It's like you never meet anyone's expectations. Anyone in authority, might be parents, might be teachers, might be whatever, because it always looks like you can do something really well and then you end up not doing it well right at the end. As though you're just being too lazy to finish anything. And there have been multiple things in my life that have resulted in that. Like I've touched on this channel before that I used to own a gym and that fell apart. I'm now owning a gym for the second time and it's going much smoother. And I would argue it's because I can focus on what needs to get done. And that's been very much not just because of the medication, but also being aware of like the limitations that I have and what workarounds I can do to make sure that things happen without feeling like judged. One of the hardest things for neurodiverse people, especially when you don't know that you're neurodiverse, is trying to do it the neurotypical way. And you have lots of neurotypical people around you telling you the way it should be done. And because you're just trying to fit in with the way the rest of the world works, you attempt to replicate it without any success. And that has been the story of my life. The same thing that has made me unique has also been the thing that's been stopping me a lot of the time, right? At first, like when I first took the medication, it's like everything became really clear. I was so amazed at what a single stream of consciousness felt like. And then the realization that this is how neurotypical people feel inside their brain made me be like, wow, I've been playing life on hard mode this entire time. Then me being arrogant in some ways when it comes to this, I was like, these people have had it so easy and they've achieved so little, right? So that's where my brain went. And I felt like a superhero for a bit. Once the initial relief and puzzle piece that falls into place and explains so much of your life has kind of settled, that's when you start reflecting back on your time and all the crappy things you missed out on, right? Like all the opportunities that you also don't know why you fumbled at the last moment. Like I had a great design job that I fumbled back in the day. I've had obviously my gym. Relationships are a whole nother ball game that I would I don't want to go into, but like for me, I definitely have a sense of what we call rejection dysphoria syndrome, which basically is like such a fear of rejection from all these external stimuli of people telling you that you're oversensitive or blah, 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 that you sometimes deal with things for longer than you should, rather than the fear of being rejected once again. This ends up quite destructive because you end up with toxic people in your life and all sorts of strange things like that. But one of the key things from a relationship point of view, I told you I'm going stream of conscious, look at me, I've gone business and now I'm talking about my marriage, is Sophie has always been good to me. Always, even pre-diagnosis, the things that didn't make sense to her in regards to what was making me anxious, how I was acting, why I couldn't do things, she always met it with like understanding, even if it like rationally didn't make sense. She never judged me for it, and it made me always feel like I could talk quite openly about it. Post-diagnosis, one of the biggest things was it gave me the words to communicate what was happening, right? Like until that moment, I felt like my brain was gaslighting me because it made no rational sense on why everything was happening the way it was. And it gave me the tools to communicate, the tools to say, hey, I know that you've set me this simple task that's super important and it's the last thing that has to happen, but there is a barrier that I can't explain stopping me from doing it. This might be as simple as like, hey, Damien, your credit card's overdue. You've been paid, you have money in your account. Make sure you log into your bank and just put that money across, pay that credit card. Now, prior to ADHD, I would get these like barriers, right? And they would stop me from doing those things. And then people would be like, did you pay your credit card? And you tell little white lies. You're like, yeah, I totally did. Because you know it's stupid that you haven't. And then they snowball and eventually you're in trouble because you didn't do the simple thing that you knew you should have done. Everyone's told you should have done. Now it's gotten out of control and you're not too sure why you let it get this far, but you did. And that is like the shame associated with it. Until you understand that that barrier preventing you from doing that little thing exists and is somewhat out of your control, you run into these moments all the time and it looks like self-sabotage when it isn't. So having this like ability to communicate has been fantastic, and not feeling ashamed about it and asking for help when it needs to be done. One of the big things with strength block, because of my weird barriers and strange associations I have with money, is I don't handle any of it. I don't even have access to strength block's bank accounts. I don't do any invoicing of clients. All these things that seem simple, I've learned I can't do, and Sophie does all of them. She is our money person in the business. I understand how money needs to flow. I understand how businesses need to be structured, but for some reason, I can't do the simple day-to-day things. It's on Sophie. And being medicated has allowed me to see this rather than getting angry at myself for being like, I will do it, it's not a big deal, but then not being able to do it. So the focus from being medicated has allowed me to really gain perspective on what all these little self-sabotages that have always existed in my life have been. But it's also allowed me to just kind of grit my teeth and like check off the little boxes when multiple tasks need to be done to finish something. I've always been a big picture thinker, but I'm not very good at like the little day-to-day stuff that has to occur. I've always joked like, I should be an entrepreneur that just comes up with a business, spends the first 6 months establishing its systems, and then I just hand it over to someone else and move on again. Because I would happily start a new business every 6 months. Like, it would be great. For me, once the dopamine runs out of starting the business, it can be very difficult for me to keep it up, right? Keep the wheels turning. And Sophie definitely helps with that. She is much better at that. The advantage of being that way inclined is I'm not afraid to let my business pivot. I'm not afraid to say, this isn't working, let's shift it up. And you've seen it in Strength Block, right? We started as a gym, then like with a focus on personal training. Now we've kind of moved into like a membership, but then I wanted the membership to be different from another gym. So we tried to create a portal that our members had access to programming, which then led us to like, what happens if everyone has a high-end app that we've designed the programming that shows our expertise as coaches, but also gives a lot of direction to our members. We then took this app and released it as an actual app that anyone can use, so anyone can have access to our high-end programming. These have all been pivots that were never in the original plan for what Strength Block was supposed to be, and it's better for it. But making all those steps join up in a cohesive way is where I've always been able to I've always fallen short. I've always been able to, like I said, see the big picture. I could even list you what the steps are to get there, but I've never been able to get there. The medication allows me to be less time blind and plan accordingly. Me being time blind has always been a massive issue. I very much live in the moment. I don't think about what happened yesterday. I don't think what's going to happen tomorrow. It's just about what's happening right now. And while that's very good for being like creative, it's made me quite a good partner because I engage very well. It even makes me a good coach because I am with you in that moment, and that's all that exists to me. But up until now, my life has felt like I've just been stumbling forwards moment to moment. And sometimes I get it right and it becomes sustainable. Sometimes I get it wrong and it has no effect on what one day going into the other day is. The medication has kind of extended that window and allowed me to see a lot further forwards and plan ahead. One of the weird things that used to really worry me is I didn't feel excitement for anything coming up. I've always been like that. So it helped in the sense that like when I was competing in powerlifting, martial arts, that kind of stuff, I didn't feel nervous for anything either. But I also never felt excitement. If you plan a holiday, I don't feel excited until I'm there. I only exist in the moment. When it comes, like emotionally, I only exist in the moment. And obviously this has its benefits because it allows, especially in the unstable world of entrepreneurship, it's allowed me to keep my cool when others wouldn't be able to because I don't worry. Well, I do worry, but I'm more concerned about what's happening right now. That again, like just leads into how you can feel like a broken person. So like I was never excited about my wedding day until I was on my wedding day. And that's a pretty hard thing to be internalizing. You know, it's like I love Sophie to death. I knew that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her, but then I'm like, why am I not excited about getting married? But then when the day happened, it was amazing. It's the best day of my life. And that's been for every major moment of my life. Everything I'm supposed to get excited for, I don't until I'm there. So to kind of wrap this all up, I would say that being medicated has been a life changer for me. And I know it isn't for everyone, but it's definitely for me. Saying that, I don't know if I will be medicated my entire life or if this is just something I require right now to build the stability for the future. I would say that the medication makes me a bit more serious than I'm used to being. And therefore, like, there are times where I miss my fun personality, if you would say. But that fun personality comes at quite a massive cost. I'm definitely more happy and more emotionally regulated while being medicated. So while that fun personality, that might just be like a mask and I'm only remembering the good things about it, not remembering all the anxiety that comes with it. This level of emotional stability is definitely 100% worth it. And maybe at some point in my life, I will be in a stable financial living environment that doesn't require me to stay so focused all the time to stop the house of cards from toppling. And either way, I wouldn't be upset. Like if I have to stay medicated, sweet. If I come off it, all right. But what I can say is I now feel like I'm in control. And like I said at the beginning, the choice to be medicated is a personal choice and it's not for everyone. I definitely know some people that hate it. And I'm not one to stay still either. So I'll probably check in over time and have more discussions on how my ADHD journey is going. But that's all for today. If you want some absolutely awesome training, make sure that you check out our Strength Block app. It's available worldwide. The link is in the description. Also, make sure you check out Strong Apparel. We just released the Xena Warrior Princess Tee on oversized pump chasers. The design's been around for a while. It's been our most popular, but yeah, we just released it on a thicker, boxier, heavyweight tee, which is like fantastic for training. Also available worldwide. Check my website. All designs are designed, illustrated by myself. So there's no team behind any of this. It's just Sophie and I pushing on. So check out Strong Apparel. I appreciate all the support and hope you guys have a lovely day. Ciao.